What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. It turns out the most controversial game of the year has been banned in China, that being Animal Crossing. Yeah, we'll talk about that story and what happened there. It's a strange time, by the way, for Nintendo, who seemed anyway to be trying to get that game approved to be in China, so strange timing there. And then also, Final Fantasy VII Remake appears to have sold enough copies despite a lot of retail stores being closed to top the sales charts. We'll talk about that one. And then WWE 2K21 most likely will not be coming out this year, which is a shame because I was looking forward to the sequel to the buggy mess that was 2K20. As always, guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're brand new here, hit that red subscribe button down below. And we're going to start today with Final Fantasy VII Remake as people are buying it up and playing it. And I have to say, I know there's this timed exclusivity deal in play, which is kind of where we're leading into right now, but I wouldn't wait a year. There's no way you're going to be able to navigate the internet with some of the spoilers that are probably going to be showing up more and more as people complete this game. But in a thank you trailer that was put out just before launch, it was April 9th, it looks like it was recorded on PC because at the bottom, during some of the gameplay sections, it literally says gameplay captured on PC, which of course we know because if you buy it on the front, there's a little sticker that says it's exclusive for 1 year. They even give you the date in April when it will not be exclusive anymore on the PlayStation 4. So most of us figure, okay, it's going to the Xbox, but PC, yeah, I could see that happening as well. And the fact that they are capturing gameplay and making it so obvious by putting a little piece of text down there is leading most people to believe that that will happen, which, I mean, the game already looks fantastic on a PlayStation 4 Pro, even a base PS4. I can't imagine how ridiculous this game will look because it will probably receive patches to polish different parts up as well and fix any bugs. But when it comes to PC and gets the works in terms of, a system menu that has all kinds of graphical settings, yeah, that's gonna be something else. But shocking? No. I mean, PC and Xbox, to me anyway, seem almost locked in for next April. But can you wait till that long? That's the question. Also, if you were someone who was excited about Burnout Paradise being revealed for the Switch, despite that $50 price tag, you'll be happy to know that it appears to be coming out in June. And yeah, we'll actually have pre-orders opening pretty soon. They put this page up here with pre-orders starting April 23rd and it apparently launching, as they say, June 2020. Now, Burnout Paradise Remastered being $50 is a bit of a stretch, and it's a strange one, I think anyway, for EA to show up with, although I guess it's like an arcade racer, so they figure, we'll just throw it on there, and the fact that it doesn't have analog triggers won't necessarily matter because it's not a simulation racing game. But I did like Burnout Paradise. It's weird that it's so expensive on the Switch from EA, where it's pretty cheap pretty much on every other system at this point. And it's not even like a new game. They just remastered it, put it on the other systems, and I guess they decided to just move it over to the Switch. A very strange missed opportunity, I would say, from EA when they have so many other things they could have ported, like, I don't know, Mass Effect Trilogy. Yeah, that would probably be worth $50. Also, while we're all pretty much hanging out, waiting to see what the PlayStation 5 will look like, a lot of people have been going back and checking out different things that were written up previously about the PlayStation 5 as people still search for clues and different things to get an idea as to what the PS5 will be ultimately capable of. And one of those pieces, I guess, was the Wired article, and it looks like some people on Reddit went back, took a look, and they realized, as you can see here, it says the dev kit was an early low-speed version. It's concealed in a big silver tower with no visible componentry, and that's referring to the dev kit that ran that PlayStation 5 version of Spider-Man that instead of loading in like 10 or 12 seconds or whatever, loaded in 0.8 seconds, like really, really fast. But that was the low-speed dev kit. How fast is the PlayStation 5 going to be? Because we heard Mark Cerny mention that it could even in some instances just be instantaneous. Like they would have to slow down the transition period because it would be so fast. How we have things that fade, to black and then fade back up. They would have to slow that down because it would just be like right away. It's interesting to think about that. But yeah, even the dev kit that impressed everyone from like last year was the lower speed one. So that's gonna be something when we finally see what the PS5 can do. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start with this Animal Crossing banned in China situation. So this was a little surprising, although I guess based on what China's done in the past, it's it shouldn't be that surprising. It's so strange because it's Animal Crossing, and it's like, I mean, just look at Animal Crossing. Like, how do you ban that, right? Well, it turns out people started sharing different things on Twitter. Now, of course, everyone's been inside because of the virus, so people are looking for ways to, I guess, express themselves online, and one of the greatest ways, it seems right now, is Animal Crossing, and we've seen the sales reflect that as everyone wants to get it and, well, live a life without going outside, I guess, and that's the best way to do it. But you can have user-generated content in it. Of course, people make all kinds of really cool canvases or little pictures and all kinds of cool clothing. Well, it seems that in China anyway, people were continuing to protest, but just in Animal Crossing. For example, you can see on Twitter, Joshua Wong went ahead and shared his island, where it says Free Hong Kong, had stuff plastered all over their island there in those images, and it seemed that China did not like that at all, and Daniel Ahmed covered a lot of the story as it was breaking, and it included China banning the sale of Animal Crossing on, for example, their version of eBay. I believe it's called Taobao. I probably said that wrong, but they essentially sent out letters that said you can no longer sell Animal Crossing online here. And that, again, is interesting because, yes, it's user-generated content, but if you go into Animal Crossing, it's not easy to share what you're doing in your game without something like Twitter, for example, to a mass audience or YouTube or anything else, a way to blast that image out there. Yes, you can create it, and Daniel Med points out here that it has to do with things like the game has content or user-generated content that is deemed to be too offensive or violent. The game has become very popular and caught the attention of regulators like GTA 5, and he says, in this case, Animal Crossing is impacted by both points. User-generated content in the game has been used by Hong Kong protesters, and for other politically sensitive user-generated content, the game is extremely popular on social media and everyone knows about it. So I still looked at that and said, okay, well, Animal Crossing, what you're essentially opening up is, I mean, kind of like what you would open up with Paint or something, right? Where you're kind of filling in pixels and all this, and you create some pretty cool things. Seriously, there have been some awesome things I've seen online, but China apparently doesn't like that people decided to go ahead and create ways to do the Hong Kong protester messages in the game. Now, Daniel Med also points out that Animal Crossing is so popular, and if people really want it, they'll figure out how to get it. They'll contact these sellers online privately. There are still mom and pop shops that will probably sell it, of course, and that's how people in like mainland China have been able to get the Switch in the first place. They have been importing it and finding private sellers who sell it to them, I believe at like a markup, of course, but the fact that the Switch has not been allowed in mainland China until fairly recently still didn't stop people from getting it, so Animal Crossing, I think, will still be flowing pretty freely, I'll say, in China. It just might be a little harder to get it considering a lot of the online public avenues that they would have gone through to get it are no longer there. But the other thing to think about is that Nintendo was working to get the Animal Crossing Switch system approved in China for sale. They had to get their Switch system approved. They had to get like New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. They have to go by a game-by-game basis. So something I'm curious about is if Animal Crossing comes up, if they'll work to just remove the user-generated portion of it. Because, I mean, I guess without that, there's not much they can do with it then. But that would be overly sensitive, I would say, by China to be like, they can't make things in the game, even though that's what a lot of people really like about Animal Crossing, but that's just the way it is in China from what we've seen. And we've had a long history of that with, of course, even just very recently Blizzard and that whole thing. So yes, Animal Crossing is too controversial for China, so they had to take care of it and ban it. Next up, let's talk about the UK sales charts. Now, these track, of course, week to week, and they are physical sales, which, interestingly enough, you would consider would be down, right? But they appear to be, like, overall game sales appear to be up, according to GameIndustry.biz, 2%. But let's take a look at the top 10 as you're seeing here. Final Fantasy VII was at the top at number 1. Then we had Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Animal Crossing New Horizons, FIFA 20. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe jumped up, by the way, from the 25th spot to the 5th spot. And that seems to be because Nintendo Switch systems came in stock, and people seem to buy Mario Kart 8 Deluxe when they buy a Switch almost every time, but we've seen the sales for Mario Kart, so that does make some sense. And then we have Forza Horizon 4, Resident Evil 3, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, Grand Theft Auto 5, and The Last of Us Remastered. Now, according to Game Industry, it does appear that this game, Final Fantasy VII, sold exactly half of what Final Fantasy 15 sold, but again, current circumstances in the world with the virus and shops being closed down, and of course, a lot of people already moving more and more towards the digital side of things. They've been seeing a slump in physical sales even since Final Fantasy 15 came out, so that kind of makes sense that it'll be dropping down, but selling half in this circumstance, okay, but if you compare it to last week when we had Resident Evil 3 drop, it sold twice as many as Resident Evil 3, so it seems that Final Fantasy VII Remake so far is off to a good start. Also, we had all those weird stock issues, and it broke street date all over the place, and the release for Final Fantasy VII has been odd, to say the least, right? But we'll see Famitsu coming up pretty soon this week as well, and I'll be curious to see how Final Fantasy VII Remake does end up selling. But so far, at least, it's off to a good start. Next up, let's talk about WWE 2K21. Most people, myself included, were expecting some form of wrestling game to come out, simulation wrestling game, whether it's a working one or a bug-filled one, who knows? I mean, at this point, we expect it to be more of a, we'll say, simulation wrestling comedy game, right? With some of the bugs that come out. It is wild online when that does drop, but 2K21, I mean, oh, yeah, we figured they would roll it out, but it sounds more and more like it won't happen, and that speculation started apparently earlier this year, but it really ramped up after WrestleMania took place, and there was no announcement for a new wrestling game this year. That tends to happen because, of course, they have very, very good ratings during WrestleMania, so they figure they want to show off or at least have an announcement with a trailer of some kind for their next game. Doesn't appear to be the case, though, this year. Now, over on the channel, Violent Lee, he does go through a set of circumstances that seems to point to WWE 2K21 being canceled. Now, he does name, or at least talk about and refer to another game that could come out that would be different. So, here's hoping for a turn-based RPG that has Brock Lesnar and Goldberg, that'd be amazing. But having a different type of game could mean like they bring back Legends or something is what I'm thinking. Something that's not as in-depth as like 2K20 or a simulation wrestling game. Maybe one that's just like wild and like this big arcadey mess is what we'll say. Now, it's also been pointed that the different wrestlers have not been called in for mocap work or anything, and we do know that there was a big breakup with Yuke's and Visual Concepts last year, and seems like development was kind of thrown into turmoil, and they weren't even sure if it would come out, and that was earlier this year, where it appears to have been a 50-50 chance. Not surprising to myself, though, because I think it would be good for them to take a year off anyway with the quality they've been putting out. If they can take a year, regroup, and kind of get set up with at least an idea and a strategy in mind with some focus group testing and try to figure out how they would work towards 2K22 that's not full of bugs and, well, low quality is what we'll say. I'd be all for that anyway. I think most people don't even really look forward to the wrestling games like we used to back in like the PS2 and the GameCube days. Like the PS2 games were amazing back then, and it really has fallen off, I think, since then. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Valve possibly trying to do another Steam controller. This one threw me off because they discontinued the old one and they sold it off for like $5 or something. It was super cheap, and I did get one, and we'll probably look at it at some point, but it's not a good controller. It's very, very cheap feeling. I don't like the idea of it at all, but they still sold it for a while, and I do know some people do like it for certain games. That's fine, but there's a patent that has now been discovered, and you can see it here, and this was found by Valve News Network, and it appears to show a Steam controller that is modular, where you can change out that part where we had the analog stick on the previous one, change it out with things like a D-pad or even a different type of analog stick, maybe a longer one or one that's more concaved or something. There's probably several options they can do there, and that's kind of neat. The modular controllers, I feel like, is something we will get to someday as being like the norm, but like they still feel a little strange. Like there's the Astro C40 for the PlayStation 4, and there is still what I'm gonna call some creak to it. Like you can tell that the buttons and like the D-pad, things that can be removed, shift slightly in it. As much as they try to keep it from moving, there is still some creak to it, and unfortunately that means it doesn't feel quality. And it's interesting to see Valve try that with a patent, because look, a patent doesn't necessarily mean it will happen, but Like, I could see them still wanting to try to monetize a bit further with an accessory because they can just put it on Steam and put it in front of people and probably fill tons of orders every day pretty much with their own branded controller. So I don't think they're out of the controller game completely. This could just be an idea as to what they're trying to figure out behind the scenes. But if I were Valve, I would work on the quality and the feel and just the overall build of their Steam controller before you start trying to have parts change out on the fly. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This one's from Drew Breezy saying, here's the plastic your games will come in. And this is the funny thing. We take that for granted now, right? This could be the last generation that we talk about game cases. Stop and think about that for a second, because if the generation like the PS6 and I don't know, whatever Microsoft calls their next system, who knows, but if those are all digital, there will be no need for plastic cases that hold discs. So think about that for a second. We're making fun of the idea of them showing us like, I don't know, a white case with like blue accents or something to match like what we've seen so far, but like, if this is the last generation, we're gonna look back on it and be like, oh man, we were making fun of game cases and now we don't have any. Ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. Enjoyed this video, guys. Hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it's China banning the ever controversial Animal Crossing. What do you think about that situation? Let me know that down below. And then also, what about Final Fantasy VII topping the UK sales charts? How do you think this is gonna do for Square going forward? Because playing that game, it cost them some money, so they definitely split it up, thinking that they'll sell several copies every time they release a new chapter. And let me know how you think it'll do overall. And then what do you think about Steam having their own controller and then 2K21 possibly being canceled and them looking towards 2K22? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.